Treasurer of the PNCR and e-commerce. Today's press statement will be read in two parts, and we will begin with a statement by Mr. Lowe, followed by Mr. Manipal.
Thank you very much. PNCR calls for cash payments to be made, where possible, through established payment systems. Rather than capitalizing on established databases and payment systems to pay out a one-off $100,000 cash grant, the PVP has instead created a parallel system that is burdensome, chaotic, and in constant flux. Guyanese are already experiencing and witnessing a live demonstration of the PVP government's incompetence and incapacity to learn. The government has failed to exploit the fact that over 150,000 public servants and pensioners receive monthly payments through an established government scheme. Approximately another 150,000 private sector workers are also registered in the tax system. These 300,000 workers and pensioners and tens of thousands of other Guyanese have tax identification numbers, which are unique identifiers. Furthermore, most citizens already have ID cards. Let us also note that hundreds of thousands have bank accounts and could therefore receive payments by direct government transfer into those accounts. Moreover, systems could easily be upgraded to encourage more citizens to apply for and be issued TIN and ID cards. The PVP has instead decided to create a whole new and senseless system for all 600,000 Guyanese adults to first register and later to be physically handed checks in person. All persons will then have to join lines at banks to deposit or cash their checks. Not surprisingly, complaints from pensioners, public servants, persons with disabilities, shut-ins, and other citizens are increasingly mounting. We are seeing long waiting times, inadequate and conflicting official communication, inept operations at centers, and some registered persons not receiving their checks. The elderly should not be standing in the hot sun for prolonged periods, or at all, and pregnant women and people with disabilities should be similarly catered for. Every cash grant, registration, or delivery facility must be equipped with adequate seating, access facilities such as wheelchair ramps, and trained personnel to address the related needs. As one pensioner complained in a letter to the editor, "God, please help us. How much treatment of indignity can we take?" We call on the government to cease the unnecessary registration process and for payments to be made where possible through the same mechanisms that it currently regularly used. This will remove the need to needlessly process over 50% of recipients and thereby minimize the burden on the system and the frustration and time wasting of citizens. These approximately 300,000 persons need not stand in line either to register, to collect checks, or to deposit checks in the bank. For those individuals who do not fall under these existing formal systems, the government is fully responsible to ensure they have access to the grant in a timely and efficient manner. Everyone can see that the current chaos is due to the absence of planning, competence, and common sense by the PVP, whose VP likes to boast that the government is adept at planning. The government claims that it is trying to create its own database to make future one-off grants, whenever those may be. But in so admitting, the government is exposing its ignorance of how to piggyback on the current datasets and its inability to properly undertake any new data gathering exercise. Any other payout under the PVP would be just as sluggish, chaotic, and frustrating. The PNCR-APNU, as the next government, will employ experts to both design a comprehensive social safety net and to ensure payout of cash and allocation of benefits are done in an efficient and citizen-friendly manner. Thank you.
The Ethnic Relations Commission must do more than organizing film competitions to enhance race relations in Guyana. We note that the Ethnic Relations Commission, ERC, has organized a short film competition as, according to reports, an important initiative aimed at using the power of storytelling to foster mutual respect and understanding among Guyana's diverse communities. We in the PNCR are not against such initiatives. It is our view, however, that for the Commission to effectively and comprehensively undertake its constitutional mandate, it must give priority to more structural and systemic solutions. Let us recall that Article 212D of the Guyana Constitution, properly read, obligates the ERC, 1, to build good ethnic relations, 2, to identify, prevent, and eliminate ethnic discrimination, and 3, to promote equality of opportunity regardless of ethnicity. These obligations demand that the Commission focus on governmental policies and institutions that control the distribution of state resources and opportunities, such as jobs, contracts, subventions, and cash transfers. These obligations also demand that the Commission must seek to instigate policy, administrative, organizational changes within all state agencies to ensure their operations enhance ethnic relations, eliminate ethnic discrimination, and promote equal opportunity for all. The Ethnic Relations Commission must also design and implement impactful programs to build harmonious intercommunity and intra-community relations in the country across ethnic lines. Additionally, the ERC must look to work with the Ministry of Education to develop multicultural programs for lower school children to help them function in a society with ethnic, gender, and social diversity. The Ethnic Relations Commission must make big strides to fulfill its enormous constitutional responsibilities, including that in Article 212DK, which mandates the Commission, quote, to monitor and review all legislation and all administrative acts or omissions relating to or having implications for ethnic relations and equal opportunities, and from time to time prepare and submit proposals for revision of such legislation and administrative acts and omissions. Fulfilling these responsibilities will take far more than film competitions and concerts. As nice as these may be, let us use the opportunity to advise the Ethnic Relations Commission that as a critical first step, it should consult widely with stakeholders and prepare and release its long-term strategic and action plan, if it has not done so already. And secondly, I want to speak on the Procurement Act and method of Guyana, as I have been doing for the past couple of weeks. And I want to let the public know that I was in the Barima-Waini region, region number 1, over a couple of days back. And I have recognized, after receiving several complaints, that there is an abuse of the Procurement Act of 2003 in that region, as I am sure there is a similar abuse in other regions. Now, Procurement Act of 2003, Section 27(1) speaks to the request for quotations, and it reads, the procurement entity may engage in procurement by means of a request for quotations, provided that the estimated value of the procurement contract does not exceed such amount as may be prescribed by regulation. And 2, before awarding a contract under this section, the procuring entity shall obtain and compare quotations from as many qualified suppliers or contractors as feasible, but not fewer than 3. I have managed to unearth, after interacting with residents in Region 1 and receiving several complaints, that there are 2 particular companies that are dominating the procurement system and getting contracts in the Barima-Waini region. One company goes by the name of ARK Trading, or some may say ARC Trading. I was told that this company is owned by Mr. Fayaz Mohammed Shadiq, and he happens to be, as I was told, the husband of Miss Sarah Brung, MP, who is serving as a parliamentary secretary in this current 12th Parliament. I am also guided that he was an engineer at the Public Works Ministry, and I was told that he tendered his resignation from that ministry after another contractor alleged that he was soliciting bribery from him. And I'm told that there's a recording to that effect. This is all what was allegedly told to me by residents in that region. But what worries me is the fact that he has a relationship to the Member of Parliament, Miss Sarah Brown, who is a parliamentary secretary. His company is registered at lot 1284 block CC, Providence, East Bank, Demerara, and the email address is ark592@gmail.com with a telephone number 592-670-7314. And there's a quote there that says building with vision. That is what I found in the public space as his logo. And I want to mention that some of the works that he is in receipt of in Region 1 is, for example, the supply of concrete to build a 1 km road at Waramuri, and this was given to him by the Special Projects Unit at the Public Works Ministry, the very ministry that he served as an engineer and subsequently resigned for reasons that can be further spoken of. The second one he has there is construction of wharf at Komaka, Muruka, and this was awarded about 6 months ago. It is currently not completed. He's also awarded the repairs to bridge at Komaka, at Muruka there, awarded over 6 months ago without any advertising, and nothing has begun at the place of the work site as yet. And he was just awarded the construction of 1 km road from Hosororo to Wauna. And the other company I wish to speak to is Supreme Contracting and Supplies. And I am guided by people from the Barima-Waini region also that this company, the Supreme Contracting and Supplies, the owner or the proprietor is the common law husband of the vice chairman of the Barima-Waini region. And what is even more troubling is that his brother happens to be a staff at the Barima-Waini administrative region in the engineering department as an overseer that is responsible for the supervision of these works as they're executed. His name, the owner for Supreme Contracting and Supplies, is Dude Not Ram. I'm told that it's Dude Not Ram, and his brother's name is, let me just get that information for you, please. Okay, so I will get the brother's name in a few, but he is also in receipt of several projects there at Region 1, like the construction of a bridge and timber revetment at Barima End Access Road, Mabaruma. And I saw that on the NP Tab website to the tune of $20 million. The establishment of electrical grid at Kwabana for $32 million. The construction of an L-shaped living quarters at Mabaruma for $79 million. Extension of Komaka electrical network for $29 million. So when we speak about the degree of friends, families, and favorites and the abuse of the Procurement Act to the space where it is permitting corruption at a different level, these are the examples that we can give at this point in time, reference to region number 1. And it is imperative that we understand that this kind of work, this kind of operation in the system of governance cannot be tolerated. The name of the brother at Region 1 there is Danraj Ram, and he is the one that has to that is responsible for, in the engineering department, for the supervision of this work alongside with the other staff members in the region. So I want to bring those two findings of mine from the Barima-Waini region to the public space, and to again make that call for there to be an amendment to the Procurement Act, for there to be an inclusion of a member from the opposition to sit on the board, so that we can able to have proper scrutiny, we can have accountability, transparency, and good governance in our country, especially at a time when we have so much resource at our disposal coming from the oil resource. We must ensure that it is spent in a manner where accountability and transparency is paramount above all other actions like these, where it clearly shows the favoring of friends, families, and favorites. The second point I want to make is coming out of a meeting that was held yesterday by the Ministry of Health. The permanent secretary of the Ministry of Health met with all the doctors across the country. I can't confirm that all attended, but it was a meeting that was where all the doctors across the country was invited, and they were actually told that they must now be also facilities managers at their respective facilities. So if, for example, there are damages to the infrastructure, there is some damage to maintenance that requires maintenance, whether it's a pipe that is broken, a sink that is broken, accessibility, a door handle fall off, whatever it is, that the GMOs must also bear responsibility of managing the facility to the point where they have to feed the information to the administrator, the necessary hospitals that are supervising these level 2 care facilities, health facilities. And I am saying that this is most unfortunate, that this is the addition of workload to our GMOs, our medical doctors that are trained to deal with clinical matters. They're trained to handle patients and clinically related matters to patients. And these facilities are to be managed by facilities managers, and we should not seek to burden our healthcare workers, in the sense here, doctors and nurses and so on, who already have their job description well laid out. And it is unfair for us to now want to put this level of burden onto them. And we should seek to ensure that we employ adequate personnel at these respective medical facilities to do the necessary job that is within their purview. I wanted to make those comments, and that is it.
Thank you, Mr. Magnifol. We will now open the floor for questions, and it is customary by raise of hand to state your name and media house. Okay, we have someone in-house.
Good morning, Naomi Paris with the Guyana Chronicle. Just following up on your statement that you made regarding procurement. You spoke about the award of contracts to someone who would have resigned from his office and is now a private citizen, condemning this. But would you also condemn the actions of former coalition minister, Ms. Cathy Hughes, who was flagged for awarding contracts to her company while in office? Also, there is still the issue of Mr. Hughes, who's running for public office and represents ExxonMobil.
All right, so let me make it very clear that I became a member of parliament in this 12th parliament on the 2nd of September 2020, after serving in the Essequibo Islands, West Demerara region. I have an obligation as a member of parliament to examine the way this government is operating. This government, as in the Irfan Ali-led administration. And as a servant of the people, one of the youngest member of parliament, I must say, I have an obligation to hold this government accountable for their actions. And here is it that I am pointing out that not only has Mr. Fayaz Mohammed Shadiq resigned from his position after it is being told to me after being engaged in activities that are unbecoming, and it was Minister Ejel, I'm told, who suggested to him that he should resign. All of those are allegations that were put to me by persons in Region 1, which I made some calls to contacts that I do have in the Ministry of Public Works that said to me that it is absolutely true. But, you know, for the sake of evading any legal questionings and those kind of things, I have to let you know that that is what was brought to my attention. But worrying is the fact that he is the husband of Miss Sarah Brown, who's a parliamentary secretary. So I am holding this government accountable for their actions. With reference to what you said about Miss Kathy Hughes, I was not serving in her ministry. I do not know if she had removed herself from being the owner of that company per se at the time. I do not know who were the proprietors of the company at that time, and I don't know what system was used for the procurement. My concern is primarily focused on what is happening now, because I am serving in a capacity now to do what I am doing. And I'm making representation on behalf of the people of Guyana who have elected me to do just that, hold this government accountable for their actions. And even if you want to say that those things that you made reference to happen and so on, it's not, this tit for tat is what is the problem. The tit for tat is exactly what is the problem. And that is why we need to ensure that what we do as members of the public, as politicians, as representatives of the people, we have to hold the government accountable for their actions. And that is what I'm doing.
All right, I'd like to follow up. Given the situation with Ms. Cathy Hughes, all of those things have been placed into the public record. Are you basically saying you won't hold your colleagues accountable?
I never said anything like that. I don't know why you're putting an interpretation to what I said. I said that I am holding the government accountable for what I know and what I have investigated. I'm saying to you further that I do not know if Cathy Hughes was the owner, the proprietor of that company at the time when what you're saying to me occurred. I do not know if it was in the name of somebody else. I do not know also if the procurement method that was used, I don't know nothing of the sort about that. Absolutely nothing I don't know. What I do know is that I see Chronicle, I see DPI, I see agents of the PPP putting it out there, hammering it, but I can't trust the information that is coming from agencies that are associated with the PPP, especially when it is twisted to suit a certain narrative. But I know that what I am putting out there is very much legitimate, and I have cross-examined, and I have followed up, and I have made phone calls to verify. So it's not a matter of me just receiving information from my colleagues and friends and residents of Region 1. When I came back on the coast, I made calls to the Ministry of Public Works. I am to receive a recording, which I will also make public when I get it. I should be getting it today. And I also interacted with several other people who know the dealings of these two particular companies, and I'm bringing it to the public's attention because that is what I am elected to do.
Okay, Ms. Michael.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We will now take Ms. Williams.
Good morning. And also in your name is Mr. Lowe. The Vice President has been edging about the seventh project that Exxon is looking to have in Guyana, Hammerhead. And there were some recent concerns in relation to getting more benefits from this project. Do you believe that Guyanese should be able to get more fiscal benefits from this project before the government even considers to grant a permit?
Thank you very much for your question. As we have previously mentioned, we believe that it is important and urgent that the government engage the operator, and doesn't have to be at the instance of the granting of an additional permit. It could be in the near future. It could be that the government engages with consultants and with legal representation to have that discussion and prepare itself. Rather, we have not seen any movement on that front, despite the government promising that it would renegotiate the contract. That's not been their stance at all since getting into office. And so the approval of the license of development could be an opportunity to speak to the company. However, that is not going to happen on the PUP. They have no interest in engaging the company in any particular sphere. And so sadly, these opportunities will pass by without any discussions whatsoever. And it depends. There could be a wide range of discussions that could be had, but they don't intend to carry out any discussions at all.
Let me quick follow up. You said that the government does not basically seem interested in these kinds of engagements with Exxon, but as the opposition, do you and the PNC as a whole have any intention to basically have meetings with the government to quote unquote force their hand to meet with Exxon, seeing that it is going to be a greater benefit to all Guyanese?
Okay, so that specifically, I would say, concerns meetings. Now, you'll have observed that we have been speaking on these issues for years at this point, have made clear that this is something that the government needs to look urgently at, and you've not seen movement at all. What does that tell you? It tells you that the government just isn't particularly interested in this. So whether or not we speak to them again in a different format, they're not going to engage the operator. Ultimately, if you have a government that says when it's out of opposition, it will renegotiate, and then when it gets into government, does not even speak to the operator to engage them in any way regarding getting more for Guyanese, then all that means is that that was flatly a lie by the PUP, and that we have to understand that that is what it is. It's a lie, and if the PUP is lying all along, us engaging with them is not going to cause them to stop lying. Rather, we will see, and we have seen, one consistent attitude. We believe that it is really important with these projects that studies are carried out to determine the impact of the projects, but we're of course in favor of additional projects and additional production. It's just that we believe that there needs to be appropriate systems in place when it comes to the approving of additional licenses.
All right.
So before you go to the other question, I just want to also update that I just received a good that it's evidence that people are paying attention to what is happening in the procurement sector and the procurement system. This very company that I spoke about just now, Supreme Contracting and Supplies, I'm now told that the construction 5 other contracts were awarded. Construction of lots for Hosororo Secondary School, construction of lots for Quebana Secondary School, that's incomplete. Several deadlines have passed. Completion of 4 bridges on Wauna stretch, should have about 3 months for completion date, but only about 5% completed. Just awarded construction of shed for Northwest Secondary School, and just awarded construction of road from Baruma Compound to Thomas Hill. These are just works from Central Tender Board. There are numerous from the region. So it just goes to show that people are listening and people are also informed. And this was a very reliable source that sent this information, and that is why I can rely on it to present it to you here in not only our media, but the public at large. So it requires some degree of action, because we can't continue as a country like this, especially at a time when our resources are so much coming from oil. It has to be done better for the benefit of all Guyanese.
Mr. Adam Harris.
A very good morning. Sorry to join late. I missed the opening statement. But my question, what is the relationship between the party and the Guyana Trades Union Congress? Lincoln Lewis was critical. He said that there is no alliance. That's one. I will stop with that and I'll ask the other question after this one is answered.
The People's National Congress Reform has an open door policy when it comes to all organizations in Guyana. We have an open door policy when it comes to every single Guyanese. I made this point last week and I will make it again. We are not a political party that shy away from our responsibility, and we don't turn away any form of discussion, any form of engagement, any form of dialogue that may be necessary to promote good governance, promote building a cohesive, a strong, a vibrant, and a good society for our people. We do not run away from that. We understand what is our political objective and role, and that is to build a Guyana for all under the banner of one people, one nation, one destiny. So I would say that when it comes to not only the GTUC, but all other organizations, we have an open door policy and we engage when necessary. I trust that answered your question, Adam.
Yes, it does. And the second question, Jagio described the opposition as obstructionist, hence his refusal to have the opposition on boards and all kinds of things. What's your reaction to this obstructionist contention?
Jagdeo has to find a defense why he must continue to allow corruption to grow in his organization. He has to find a defense as to why he has to protect his friends, families, and favorites, and he has to find a defense to stay the course of corruption, because I think he also knows that 2025 may very well be the last of him with political power. So he has to find a defense, and that is the defense he has found. We continue to maintain that in order for us to build a better Guyana, in order for us to build a stronger Guyana, and in order for us to have a Guyana where this generation and through sustainable development, the future generation can enjoy a comfortable life here, it requires checks and balances. It requires us to ensure that there is real democracy. It requires us to ensure that there is transparency, good governance, and accountability. And right now, we have established over a long period of time, and again here today, that there is no good governance, no accountability, no transparency under the Irfan Ali-led administration, and the Bar Jagdeo who wants to believe that he is the godfather of Guyana. I want to say to you, Adam, and to say to everybody else, that moving forward, we have to have a better Guyana. I'm very passionate about that. I am not going to waste my time like what my good friend from the Guyana Chronicle just did, telling me about what happened back then and what happened how many years back and what's not. We have to move this country forward positively. And we have, as I've said last week, and I'm going to say again, we have a cadre of leaders in the People's National Congress Reform who are prepared to take the bull by its horn. We have a cadre of leaders who are prepared to do what is necessary for us here and the future generation. And we have to put a full stop where it ought to be and ensure that we do what is right to develop this country for the benefit of everyone.
Adam, there's also something that we need to address, which is very pernicious, and it seems to be something that is coming up again and again. It is not for Vice President Jagdeo to determine when and which and how institutions of this country, especially those enshrined by law, should function. If that is the law, that is the way the institutions should function. It is not for him to determine whether or not. And some of the determinations that he's bringing forward are found nowhere in law. As an example, when it comes to the oversight of the Natural Resources Fund, the Investment Committee, we provided a nomination. The opposition has a right to a nominee for that committee. We provided that nominee, and it took like a year before that person was actually put on the investment committee. It's not for the government to delay and to deny just because they think that someone is obstructionist. That's not their place. In fact, as it stands right now, that committee member is saying that he's alarmed that when information is requested within the law, within the Natural Resources Fund Act, when information is requested regarding how much spent, that information is not being provided. And so that committee has become, in essence, a rubber stamp. Now, again, the purpose of having those types of committees, of having institutions, is to ensure that we have good governance. It seems to me to be the attitude of the PUP to try to delay themselves, to try to block, to try to avoid any mechanism for good governance. We also see, similarly concerning, WPA mentioning that they want to see the due diligence that was done regarding this additional power ship last. We recently spoke about the fact that the power ships cost millions, and Guyanese are losing 50 to 60 million US needlessly because of the government had listened to us and had procured for additional power earlier in the year. There wouldn't be a need for such an expensive power ship. We even had blackout today. So that is a concern, but more concerning really is that Vice President again saying that the reason that they're not going to provide the due diligence is because the WPA wouldn't understand. It is not for him to determine who would and would not understand. That is, first of all, absurd given WPA has economists like Clive Thomas there. But second of all, that's just not his place in Guyana society. Information, especially when it comes to the spending of public monies, belongs to Guyanese. It is not his personal possession, just as our oil resources are not his personal possession. And it is laughable that he would even bring up something like that when he has himself demonstrated a lack of understanding on several issues. Was it not recently that we had a long back and forth around interest that is being charged, whether or not interest is being charged for oil developments? For him to come back and say, yes, it's being charged through this mechanism. Was it not a major issue that we spoke about the soil at the whale site, and he mentioned that that site was chosen because it had better soil than other places which are swampy, but we've had that project delayed by something like 9 months because of the soil? It is very rich of him to be saying that he will determine who does and who doesn't understand, who can make use of the information and can't make use of the information, when he himself apparently can't make use of information. That's the first thing. The second thing is that, it also seems to me that the Vice President seems to be saying that anyone who is not in the government can't seek advice. Civil society, opposition parties can't seek advice. That is absurd. Really, what we have to do is to call out an attitude towards governance, which is, I think, really dismisses Guyanese as if Guyanese are all, I don't know, if idiots or something. I mean, this is disgusting, and frankly, needs to cut it out. Thank you.
Adam, let me rehash what was said last week too. It cannot be that the opposition is seeking to be obstructionist. It cannot be that the opposition wants to delay any sort of progress, because the opposition is not living in a bubble. We understand that the government is the government of the day, and at all times, their membership on the tender board will always be in the greater number. What the opposition is saying is that in order for us to address and to have scrutiny and to ensure, guarantee and assure the nation that the awarding of contracts are done in a manner that is acceptable, one single seat at the table will not cause that harm or present an obstructionist motion, so to speak. And we have committed, and we're committing again, when we form the government in 2025, we will amend the Procurement Act to ensure that the opposition, who will be the People's Progressive Party, have a seat there so that they can hold us accountable, and we will not allow them to be obstructionist. That's why they will have one seat, so that they can see when an award comes in, or when bids are evaluated and a recommendation comes as to which bid is the lowest, most responsive and should receive the contract, they will be there. They will see the assessment. They will see the evaluation, and they will understand and deliberate and be a part of why company X should be awarded the contract, or why company Z should not be awarded the contract. But right now, what we have are a set of friends, families, and favorites, a set of corrupt individuals engaged in abusing the Public Procurement Act of Guyana, and they are abusing it much to their own comfort and the People's Progressive Party's comfort. And that is what we have to guard against. Contractors are complaining. Residents are complaining about substandard work. We are seeing a lot of delays in completion of works. We are seeing friends, families, and favorites being awarded huge sums of contracts to do work. And we're recognizing that they have an inability of ensuring that they have the capacity to get it done. And further, we are seeing that they are being protected. Don't bother with that 5:30 meeting that happened, which was a big sham. Up to now, you can't see anybody being held accountable. Up to now, you can't see Minister Sonia Parag or Anand Prasad being held accountable for lying to the president and saying only one project they have under their ministry that is 4 months and more delayed. Nobody is being held accountable. It was a big sham. And that is what the People's Progressive Party do. They engage in optic politics to distract the nation from the real issues. When you see Irfan holding a baby and hugging up and so on, and walking in his short pants, cooking and doing all kinds of things, optic politics to distract from the real issues that are causing our people not to enjoy the good life that they so deserve.
Thank you. Mr. Sherrod?
Yes, good morning, then Sherrod Demararis. To Mr. Mahipal, can you say what does your party envisage as a solution to the Ashikisun seat matter? And secondly, to the treasurer of the party, in the context of transparency, does your party membership know that your property, such as your land at Congress Place, is vested in a company called Micro?
All right, so Demarar, I want to ensure that I am pellucid, because last week I believe I answered one of your questions that carried a headline which I didn't agree with, but I don't blame you for interpreting it how you interpreted it and wrote. But I want to say that with this matter, I want to be very pellucid. First of all, I think it is well established that Ashikisun is a national squatter, because we have recognized that. I'm going to deal with it from two fronts. First, even if we want to accept that gentleman's agreement that ANOG, was it LJP and TNM went into, the decent thing as a politician, the decent thing as a human, the decent thing one would have expected is to honor that gentleman's agreement, which Schuman did, because after he served his period, he vacated, and it was up to ANOG. I am guided from the public information that ANOG yielded to Asha's requests, because she would have had the smallest term to serve, and they would have come afterwards. So from that perspective, the human decent thing to do would have been to vacate the seat after you served your time. That's the amount of votes you got, and that's how they had a little arrangement in place. So she's a national squatter from that angle. But then she's also a national squatter from the angle of what was guided by the legal officer of GCOM, because he said that clear interpretation based on his advice is that the seat really belongs to LJP, and because they got the most, the largest number of votes. So from that angle also, she's a national squatter. And I don't think that it is one where, you see, we as national leaders cannot put a blind eye to illegalities. From both fronts, I think Asha is illegally there in the National Assembly, and it would be of her own interest to save whatever sanity she may have remaining to do the decent thing and vacate the seat. GCOM can revoke, if they have recognized that they erred, they can revoke the certificate that is given to elected members of parliament. When I became an elected member of parliament, I have a certificate that came from the Guyana Elections Commission, dated the 20th of August, 2020. GCOM had to have also issued such a certificate to Asha Kissoon. If they recognize that they erred, they can revoke that certificate. And by revocation of that certificate, it means that she is not eligible to sit there. The speaker will then have to declare her seat vacant. And we must correct these things. It is an issue that has garnered sufficient attention, and even if it didn't, the fact is we must not condone with illegalities. And it is something that ought to be fixed. It is something that requires the attention of the Guyana Elections Commission to act, and it also requires the Speaker of the National Assembly to act. And we are hoping that they do act within the best interest of what is correct, what is legal, and what is in keeping with the Constitution and laws of this country. I trust I was very pellucid there, Dennis.
Can I ask a follow-up, sir? On what basis are you arguing that the seat can be revoked when indeed, in fact, it is a representative of the list who can ask that the seat holder be withdrawn and be replaced by someone else? What is the legal framework you're referring to as far as revocability is concerned?
Well, I'm saying that it's GCOM who issued us the certificates, declaring us elected members of the House. GCOM issues us that certificate. Asha was extracted from her list after her list representative made that extraction, and GCOM issued the certificate on that. GCOM is now saying to us that she should not have been extracted. Therefore, GCOM should not have accepted the extraction in the first place. GCOM should not have accepted that representative of that list, presenting them with a name they extracted. GCOM is saying to us that the name ought to have been extracted from the LJP list. So it is an error that GCOM made. They're accepting that they made that error based on what Kurt De Silva said at the press conference. They have accepted that. Now it's a matter of correcting that mistake. And I am saying to you that GCOM has to revoke the certificate, inform the representative of the list that they are not supposed to extract a name from that list. The name is supposed to be extracted from LJP list based on the legal guidance given. And they now move to correct it by writing the representative of the list after the seat is declared vacant by the speaker. They now have to write the representative of the list from LJP, requesting that a name be extracted to fill the vacant seat.
One of the things as well, Dennis, that I think this has provided us a really good opportunity to reflect on as a nation is, on occasion I make the point that the reason that we need GCOM to be functioning effectively, the reason that we need a robust electoral system is not merely so that the APNUAFC can get into office. It is because Guyanese are entitled to that. And of course, small parties are part of that discussion. And now you have a small party which is coming out to say that they have no confidence in GCOM and they're frustrated. And so really what we need to understand as a country is that it is in all of our interests to have a robust electoral system. It is in all of our interests to have GCOM function effectively. It's not just the AP and UAFC anymore. It's also the small parties that are complaining. GCOM is clearly in need of significant reform, and Claudia Singh's tenure has brought, I think, some of the greatest questions around the competence of the agency. That needs to be dealt with, and so this is the result of that.
And we must never forget GCOM's, we must never forget in 2006, GCOM, I think, awarded the seat in Region 10 that really had belonged to AFC, and Sam Hines was sitting there. It's a mistake that GCOM made. We remember in 2011, Gokul Budu somehow wanted to declare the People's Progressive Party with the largest number of seats in the National Assembly when they did not get the largest number of votes. We remember it was Vincent Alexander who had to really deal with that matter in 2011. And we must remember also that in 2015, when the APNU came to government at the Ministry of Communities, there was a Gokul Budu that was employee of the ministry, and we could not have located who that Gokul Budu was. So GCOM has a track record of some mischief, and it has to be fixed. It has to be addressed. It's an institution that one must have confidence in. It's an institution that the entire nation must have confidence in. And right now, GCOM is not demonstrating that which is needed, and that is the leadership and guidance for that institution to function effectively. We are in troubled waters.
Additionally to your other question, Dennis, it has been our policy that we don't comment on the internal workings of the party, whether it's assets, whether it's finances. We're going to continue with that approach. We don't believe that we should be commenting, at least, and certainly not at this forum, regarding such issues. That's something that we hold within as an internal matter of the party.
How do you hope to portray an environment of transparency when, as a mass-based party with thousands of supporters and members, what is wrong with seeing whether indeed your properties are vested in MICROC or not?
Well, there are forums in which we can discuss those things, but those are internal forums. Those are not for public consumption. And in terms of transparency, we have pointed out that across a wide range of public metrics, public forums, we have promoted transparency. We just spoke earlier in this press conference about our appointment to the NRF, who is speaking about transparency in the funding, in the use of the funds from the NRF. Now, if that, which is concerns the large single source of funding for the country going forward, does not demonstrate that we are committed to transparency, then nothing else really will.
And I was asking the question, really, if you can bear with me, is that in the public domain, there's the lingering view that your party owns, well, MICROC, which is supposedly the party that has your land vested in, owes the city hall more than $6 million in taxes. So what's going on with that?
Well, as I said, that's not something that we would comment on in the public domain. That's an internal matter, and that remains our position.
We will take a question in-house.
Following up on what you said about GCOM, would you agree that the electoral body is no better off than it was in 2020, when there was a prolonged electoral process that ended with a number of officials being sacked and now facing charges for electoral fraud?
The point, I don't know if, I don't think the GCOM is any way better now than what it was in 2015. What I can tell you is that in 2020, sorry. What I can tell you is that, and I hear them saying, I hear the PPP saying that there was a 5 months delay, and what the 2018, confidence motion, you should have called election, a whole craziness. First of all, let's examine it. How we are looking for. Let's examine it in a system, in a structured way. We're not structured in a one after the other, sequential order. The no confidence motion went to the National Assembly in December 21st, 2018. Then they're saying the 3 months after, he must hold election. David Granger, who was president at that time, and you will agree with me if you don't want to, I'm sure you will privately. David Granger has always said, when GCOM signals to me that they are ready to hold an election, the election will be held. GCOM was even written to and responded. GCOM responded and said, we are not in a position right now to hold an election. In fact, when GCOM did respond positively, and it was this very Claudette Singh, did respond positively saying that they are in a position to hold an election, it was them writing to say that they will be ready by February month end of 2020 to hold an election. That is what GCOM wrote and said. We will be in a position to hold regional and national elections by February month end of 2020. David Granger immediately named March 2nd, which was the first Monday after that month end, February month end, the first Monday, March 2nd, 2020 as the date for election. So David Granger has always depended on the advice of GCOM. In this space, the legal options that were available, that is available to you and me, that is available to Barrett Jagdeo and Leader Aubrey Norton, that is available to Irfan Ali and Arya Ali. All that legal option is our constitutional right. And that constitutional right was utilized to ascertain and to guide and to validate. Nothing was wrong using the legal arm of our state, not wrong with us using the competent authorities, be it the magistrate court, be it the high court, be it the Supreme Court, be it the CCJ. It was brought to finality after all of that, and we had our elections. Mind you, nowhere before February month end of 2020 did GCOM say to us that they were ready for an election. And you would hear Barrett Jagdeo now saying they are awaiting guidance on GCOM to know when they should set the election date. They are now awaiting GCOM to advise them on when to set the election date. It has always been like that. GCOM has to tell us of their readiness. And this current structure of GCOM, I'm even afraid if they say they will be ready for November of this year, I'll be afraid, because that list cannot be one that will facilitate credible election. That list cannot be one that will facilitate credible results. And secondly, we must never forget the recount order that was signed that led this country to a recount that lasted for, I think, 33 or more days. Well, I sat in the recount center for 33 days. It was signed, my dear friend of Chronicle, by Barrett Jagdeo and David Granger. Barrett Jagdeo and David Granger. So it was an agreement. It was an agreement that led us to that period that we had, that 5 months period. You hear Priya and all of them shouting from the rooftop over. And I see my friend Susan Rodriguez making TikTok videos. We'll have to address that another day. But it was an agreement that was signed by Barrett Jagdeo and David Granger for us to have it. And we're very grateful for that recount, mind you, because that recount showed us how the PPP rigged the election to be squatting in office in those robes that they have borrowed.
But there's a point as well I think we need to make, and this is a point that I think any Guyanese can really buy into. When we look at the officials who have replaced those who left GCOM, there are significant concerns around that appointment process, whether they met the criteria that were laid out, whether they were other qualified folks who should have or could have filled those posts. And that has also led to a really significant concern around the competence of GCOM and GCOM's decision-making processes. Now, again, if you are looking to so-called improve GCOM or to put GCOM in a position that you'd like, you don't want to perpetuate questions around the competence of GCOM, around GCOM's decision-making processes, around the governance of GCOM. Rather, you would look to have the most processes that would face any question of scrutiny. And so that is unfortunately meant that we continue to see a lot of these concerns around GCOM. And that is something I think Guyanese as a whole, there's no Guyanese who wants to see concerns around GCOM, no Guyanese who wants to see a question hanging over whether someone is appropriately qualified for a senior position at GCOM, whether they meet the criterion. I don't think anybody wants that. So sadly, this is where we found ourselves.
Just to clarify something on my question, I was speaking not about the period before elections. I was speaking specifically about that period, which again ended with a number of officials being sacked and no charge.
Okay, great. Well, my response deals directly with that because I'm speaking specifically about the officials that have replaced those officials and the process that was put in place to replace those officials, which has perpetuated questions from one side of the aisle or the other regarding the competence of GCOM. Ultimately, all Guyanese have an interest in the decisions made at GCOM being made in a way that can be scrutinized, that can be that passes the muster, so to speak, and where Guyanese feel comfortable. You've had officials appointed there amidst a cloud of questions around whether they fulfill the criteria for the appointment. And therefore, Guyanese are very frustrated. So I don't think that you can make the point at all that GCOM has improved. Rather, there's been continued concerns.
And listen, don't run away from the fact that this was politics at its best. No competent court has found any of those individuals guilty of anything. And we must never believe that a charge is representative of a proven offense. We must never, ever believe that. You could be charged tomorrow if you decide to carry a story in the Chronicle that paints me positive. But that doesn't mean that you're guilty. A competent authority has to pronounce on that. A competent authority has to pronounce on whether somebody is guilty of something or not guilty. Okay?
But it has been widely reported that persons who were appointed had prior experience in that field, unlike Ms. Myers.
It has,
where was it widely reported?
One thing that needs to be clear
Not
is that
critical.
satisfying one criteria does not mean you've satisfied all the criteria. Otherwise, what is the point of having all these systems and procurement systems in place? It can't just be, I am a citizen of Guyana, I satisfy one criteria, therefore I can get all of these other therefore I can pass through the procurement system with no checks and balances in place. There are serious questions around that process of appointing people because there were criteria that were not filled. I think one of the criteria was years of experience as an example. So listen, we have to, as a country, be mature enough to develop and to support robust institutions. And it is in no one's interest to have poor institutions, because even when you win office, there then are all sorts of questions. We want to have a GCOM that everyone has confidence in, and perpetuating concerns is not going to help anybody. It is frankly sad.
A lot of things were reported also about Anil Giddings during that same period. I think there was some story about some, I think a flash drive or some server or something, some technology thing. I'm not too versed in technology, but a lot of things were reported by Chronicle of Anil Giddings too. And Anil Giddings ended up being what now, the deputy CEO. And when you look at that press conference, it's like he was the rescuer of Claudette Singh, who seemed to be aloof and don't know what's going on at GCOM. So a lot of things were reported, a lot of things. The question is, what has been proven? And the answer is absolutely nothing to date.
So is it now an issue of PNC's preference and what you favor instead of actual qualifications?
It can never be.
Hold on a second. GCOM laid out specific criteria. As an example, one of the criteria was the question of years of experience. The criteria that created a cloud over this issue. It's not PNC's criteria, it's GCOM's criteria. And if GCOM doesn't keep to its own criteria, then, I mean, you have a serious question there. So obviously, that needs to be done. It's not the PNC. We just spoke at this press conference about the lack of confidence in GCOM from a small party. We need to grow up, move beyond this kind of back and forth, and understand that all Guyanese deserve a system in which they can have confidence. all Guyanese, not the PNCR. So it's all Guyanese. And that is the approach going forward that we need to focus on.
All right, I'll give you a break now on the topic of GCOM. I'd like to bring up the WPA. So the WPA earlier this week had said that it's interested in a grand coalition. Is this something the PNC is interested in? And what would you say would be some of your expectations for a formation of this grand coalition, especially given that the WPA has also been very vocal about not having a voice within the previous coalition?
Let me make one clear before I answer that. The WPA Minister Rupert Rupnarine was the WPA's representative in the coalition UAFC. Minister Rupnarine served as Minister of Education, and subsequent to that, it was Tabitha Sarabu Hali up until they had their own internal issues. So the seat was always there. Secondly, the leader of the PNCR has always said, and we embrace that, we are open to coalition politics. The People's National Congress reform is open to inclusionary democracy and is open to ensuring that there is wide representation for greater inclusivity in our political spectrum. And so it's not something that we have isolated ourselves from. And that is why I answered a question earlier. Somebody asked something about GTUC and so on. We are a political party that is open to inclusive democracy and coalition sense.
If I may follow up, a few weeks back, Mr. Norton had mentioned plans to engage with the AFC leader, WPA. Is there any update on when this meeting would happen?
I'm sure Mr. Norton is going to be present. Leader Norton is going to be present at the next press conference. And it's a suited question that he will answer at that time. And I hope that we will see 4 stories in the Guyana Chronicle based on the questions that were asked and the response proffered.
Well,
But
you
I
did
know
say
we
you
have
don't
to
read the Chronicle, so
that doesn't mean you can't put the story in. You never know, somebody might bring it to me in Glacier. You never know. The general manager, Moshmi, might say, Ganesh, here is the Chronicle story on you painting a positive life and the accurate information you have disseminated.
you have to read the Chronicle in order to see the stories.
That's what I'm saying to you. She might give it to me. You never know. Anyhow, we have exhausted. I don't know if there's any other questions.
Are there any other questions outside of today's press statement? All right, thank you. At this time, I'd like to thank our media personnel for joining us today, our viewing audience on all our media platforms. Thank you, and do have a great weekend.